Good morning. We have a wonderful guest today. It is Nurses Week, and we've got a wonderful RN. She is new to our team at Acappella, Michelle Johnson. She's an RN. She's got her master's in business administration, history of working in LTAC and acute care, and we are so excited to talk with her and have you on board. Welcome, Michelle. Acappella is new to Michelle. Private duty is new to Michelle. And so there's so many things about LTACs, acute care, that we're learning. And so we're going to talk about that and help the listener and just talk about Michelle and your journey in nursing. So happy Nurses Week.
Thank you. You too.
So tell me, Michelle, why did you choose nursing?
I always wanted to do something in the medical field. Early on in that time frame, so long ago, it was either be a doctor or a nurse in your mind. And I thought I wanted to go to med school until I had a family member that was sick and realized that really that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be more at the bedside. So it was a combination of always liking biology and the anatomy pieces of things, and then a family member being sick.
And it's funny, when I decided to go to nursing school, I had been to LSU, and my grandmother wound up having heart surgery, open heart surgery, and I met a student nurse when she was in recovery, and I was like, this is really, something tugged at me. This is really what I want to do. And so there's a calling.
It's true. That's true.
It is. And it's just such a wonderful, rewarding career. So it's about making a difference, of course. And there are a lot of nurses, that see it as they don't see it as a career, as a calling like you and I do.
Right.
But share a special memory as a nurse that solidified why you're in nursing.
I would say, and I had been in nursing for a great deal of time, but I went into a home care setting briefly when my kids were little, and I met the most amazing person in the home care setting. This was a second career for him. In fact, he was 50 years old when he decided to be a priest, and he was such an amazing man, and it just had such a profound effect on me. And my children were very small. In fact, I only had one child, but I just grew very close to him very quickly. He was a Catholic priest. I married Catholic. I was originally from Southern Baptist upbringing, but very quickly knew I wanted to do more in the Catholic Church and raise my kids Catholic. And he just was instrumental in that. And I just really grew close to him and taking care of him until the end of his life. So it was really, and when I met him, he was 89 years old. So wow. Yeah, he was just really something. In fact, went through another pregnancy, had him baptize my child. I mean, just very close with that patient. And it just was a pivotal time for me to be close to patients like that in their homes.
And there's so much, I did hospice for so long, and what I learned early on, just such an important lesson for me, that some of the wealthiest people have nothing, and some of the poorest people have everything.
That's true.
And there's just always something you learn as a nurse. I feel like it's a career every day. We start the day and you really don't know how your day is going to go. And it's just a special, special career. And I'm so grateful to be a nurse. And we want to shout out and thank all the nurses on the front line working right now so hard. And it's not just the nurses that are working in the hospitals. It's nurses that are working at the acute care facilities, that are working in the nursing homes, that are working in home health, in hospice. There's so many areas of nursing, and even those not affected by COVID still are affected because we want to keep the COVID away from the patient. So we are doing everything we can to keep all of our patients safe, to keep their families safe, to keep our families safe.
Right, at the same time.
So yeah, at the same time. So okay, we're gonna talk about what led you to acute care, and let's talk about acute care.
Well, I started as a student actually in the Parkland ER and ICU environment. So I was kind of hooked on that to begin with. We kind of call it being an adrenaline junkie. So that was my career early on until I went into home care. And I just never saw it as anything else. That was always my choice, to be right in the middle of acute care.
So we're going to talk about rehabs, and there's some things that I've learned from you. People go to the hospital and they find out they need to go to a rehab for X number of days, or they need to go to an LTAC for X number of days. Can you explain the difference in the two?
Okay. When you go to a big hospital, say a Baylor or a Presbyterian, those are acute care settings. It's a continuum of care if you think about it. When you go in there, you're expecting to have your surgery, go home in 3 days, 2 days, whatever, do well, life goes on. The people that don't do well end up with a set of, other issues, whether it's their heart, their lungs, diabetes, chronic health conditions, they deteriorate. Then they may get a wound, and then, oh my gosh, they've got a pneumonia. So now they're medically complex. Those patients can't just hang out in the acute care setting for 2 to 3 weeks to get better. They're too sick to go to rehab, so they've got to have a place where there's that high level of medical acuity to take care of them until they're better to go to rehab. That's an LTAC.
Okay.
LTACs are designed for a 25-day length of stay, a very medically complex patient. Those are the things that are the criteria to be admitted. When you're there, rehab is really not the focus. It's medical stability and maintaining any kind of strength to go to a rehab. So at that length of time, roughly 25 days, you're looking to either get a little bit of stability, work up to an hour, 2 hours a day of therapy, which can be incremental. But by the time you're able to master 3 hours, not consecutive hours, but 3 hours total in a day of therapy, then your criteria is met to go to a regular rehab. And rehab meaning, when I say regular, there's not a lot of medical need there. They don't have to do a lot of the high-level medical things in a rehab. And you can stay there, depending on your diagnosis, 2 to 3 weeks. Then at some point, you're ready to go home. Not always does it work well, and everybody transitions from that second rehab level, which is when home care comes in. They go home with home health. Or sometimes they do go home, and they don't need a lot of help at home. But that's kind of the continuum that we're looking at. In between all of that, you have a skilled nursing facility, which is that long-term person that's just not moving forward enough to go home, or they don't have the infrastructure at home for caregiving. They're not safe at home. It's not gonna be sustainable at home. So those people end up with a skilled nursing facility level, and that's a level that can last for months. So if that helps to clarify anything.
It does, and we'll have questions like, it does, but sometimes I'll see a patient that is allowed to stay in rehab longer, that it seems that they have the same symptoms as another client of ours that is not allowed to stay. So how is it determined the length of stay that they can stay once they get to the rehab setting?
It's determined several issues are at play. A person that has Medicare benefits, and that is what they go off of, is length of stays in different environments, are based on an episode. So if a person has been in the healthcare system in an acute care facility X number of days, they have a set number of acute care benefit days. If you utilize those days consecutively. So you go from the hospital, then you go to an LTAC, then you go to a rehab. Your days are starting to add up. They aren't infinite. They do have roughly 150 to 200 days of benefit consecutively. So what that tells the person is, or a caregiver that's looking at, why can't my loved one stay here 3 weeks instead of 2? They may not have those days left on that episode. And it's very confusing in that it's consecutive. So what has to happen with that person is they've got to back out of the system, the healthcare system. They've got to get well enough to go home, whether it's with home care for a couple of months or what. They've got to be able to back out of that healthcare system for a 60 calendar day period to reset their benefits. So the person with the same diagnosis in the room next to you may be able to stay 5 weeks because they have that benefit. They've not used that. And whereas that other person has been so chronically ill, they may only have 10 days or 14 days. Then they're going to be having to move to a different environment very quickly. So from a family member standpoint or a caregiver trying to understand the nuances of that, it really has to do with the Medicare guidelines, which on a good day are very difficult for most people to understand. But I think the best way to maneuver through that is to ask the case management staff, to ask the people that are helping you with your discharge, why? Is this because of a day, episodes?
So do they just share that? I mean, is that something you openly say, you know what, you've been in too long, you've got to be out for 60 days before we can address this?
I think some do and some don't. I think that you have to be proactive and you have to be that advocate for your loved one, and you have to say, tell me why. What is the criteria that you're using to base this decision on? I think that people need to understand they have the ability to ask those questions, and they should as an advocate. That's the only way you can maneuver through the system. I think we're so used to just taking it as, well, your insurance company won't pay for it. Ask that question, why not? In which case will they pay for it? What has to happen for that to come back into play for me? Those questions can be answered, but I think that people just don't give the information. They just want to give you the answer, well, your insurance company, rather than really explain it.
And that's why it's so important to have an advocate. And what's so challenging right now is family members can't go into the hospital.
Yes.
And they can't really go into the LTACs either, is that right?
Absolutely not.
And so how do you have that advocate if they can't see what's going on?
You have to just insist on that by phone. We've got phone, we've got FaceTime, we've got tablets. You can take those into patient rooms and have them talk to their family. We've got to be creative. And I think we've gotten creative. I mean, honestly, out of necessity. But I think that every family member should demand the answers. I mean, that's really, you've got to educate yourself. And you have the right to have the answers.
And I see home care as having a big success rate to help
absolutely.
people stay out of the hospital. And if they do need to stay healthy for 60 days, or they have a goal, using private duty to help
Absolutely.
with those daily weights, or making sure they're getting their medication on time, or making sure they go on that daily walk that they're encouraged to do.
Sometimes it's just education. The education we can give a family member and their loved one. Don't eat the chips and the pickles and the vinegary, the things that make you gain the weight when you have heart failure. All those things that we can teach to prevent a rehospitalization that people just aren't aware of. I think there's such a potential for an impact with home care in that regard.
Well, we're going to get to Nurses Week. We've got some pictures to show you, but we've had a couple of events, and we've had some technology difficulties with our filming, but just want to tell you a few fun facts about Nurses Week. The National Nurses Week starts on May the 6th of every year and ends on May the 12th, which is the birth date of who?
Florence Nightingale.
That's right. It was President Nixon who proclaimed a National Nurses Week back in 1974. So shout out to President Nixon for that. The idea of making May 6th as the National Recognition Day for Nurses was first proposed by a group of nurses from Mexico. And I find that real interesting because our very first kickoff Nurses Week event was on Cinco de Mayo, the 5th, and we had chips and salsa, and it was wonderful. Central Market donated enchiladas, and the Texas Salson donated chips. Bernard's Gourmet Foods donated salsa. And it was a wonderful time to thank these nurses on the front line. We had a wonderful event with nurses. So another little fun fact, the top jobs in 2018, according to the U.S. News and World Report, 3 of the best jobs in 2018 are types of nurses. So it's not too late. I wound up going to nursing school when I was 29. So it's not too late if you have a dream to be a nurse, to go for it. I know in the school that I went to, I was one of the younger people in my school class. I've been a nurse for 25 years, but anyway, it's never too late to follow your dream. Michelle, thank you so much for your time. We are so excited we're here. Michelle is one of several nurses that we have full-time on staff. We meet with families, direct them, educate them, provide care. So if you have any questions and just might feel you need a caregiver in the home, your mom is in acute care, but you want to get her home, Acappella is a wonderful service, and we can help guide you along the way. Our patients come first, and that's been our motto, and that's what's allowed us to grow. And so we are just excited to help you when you need the help. So thank you so much. Happy Nurses Week, and just have a great week.